The Greek navy of ancient times was a formidable force, but by the mid-1800s, not so much. Whilst some ships still flew the Hellenic flag, a mixture of age, advancing technology, and Ottoman expansion meant that the Hellenic Navy was unable to support the goals of the Greek government. Thus, in the early 1880s, it was decided to order a new class of capital ship, and thus the Hydra-class ironclads began to take shape. In the still recent world of iron and steam, Greek industry was not able to build such vessels, and so they would instead be ordered from France. Compared to other ships of the time, they were not especially large, displacing a fraction over 4,800 tons, but they also weren't at the extreme end of the small scale. 3 ships were ordered: Hydra, Spetsai, and Tsara, with work commencing shortly after the contract was signed in 1885, the ships being launched in 1889 and 1890, and all commissioning into the fleet by 1892. Their main battery consisted of 3 single 10.8-inch or 270mm guns, 2 mounted forward in open barbettes on either side of the bridge, with a small separate weather shield above, and the last, a shorter barrel version, mounted aft in its own turret. The secondary battery consisted of 5 single 5.9-inch or 150mm guns, 2 per side encasemates below each forward main gun, and the 5th ahead of and between the main guns on the same level as them, 1 deck higher than the other secondary guns, meaning the ship's strongest single facing was, technically speaking, dead ahead. Further batteries in no less than 3 different calibers and of 4 different types were scattered around the ship for anti-torpedo boat work, amounting to 4 single 3.4-inch or 86mm guns, 4 3-pounders, 4 1-pounders, and 6 1-pound revolver guns, plus 3 small torpedo tubes, 1 forward and 1 on each side. 6,700 indicated horsepower sent the ships up to 17 knots using a pair of vertical triple expansion engines connected to a pair of screws, which was a decent enough speed for capital ships of the time. Armour consisted of a belt up to 12 inches thick, with up to 14 inches protecting the main guns, along with a deck that was originally 1.9 inches thick on the first vessel, but increased to 2.3 inches on the later vessels. The armour itself was, depending on the location, either steel or compound, reflecting the transitional nature of the time period and the advantage that France had in steel armour production in the 1880s. Whilst the most modern ironclads in the Greek-Turkish equation, the Ottomans simply had a lot more ironclads, and many of those were a fair bit larger and more heavily armed, at least on paper, which meant that the Hydras generally stuck together to form a hunting pack that, in theory, should be able to chew through any Ottoman vessel or small formation that it managed to catch. At the end of the 19th century, the ships were refitted in an attempt to keep them current, although this removed all the guns smaller than the 5.9-inch weapons. It only led to more confusion, as the replacements now meant that there were 4 different calibers of small gun instead of 3, the torpedo tubes now had 2 of the original 14-inch types and a single replacement 15-inch unit. With 28 guns of various sizes plus 3 torpedo tubes, there was at least something to shoot in every possible direction. A decade later, the 5.9-inch battery was upgraded to some longer barrel models, just in time for the First Balkan War, where they would get to face off against the Ottoman fleet, which now included a couple of ex-German pre-dreadnoughts. But in both the battles of Ely and Lemnos, they were left to the naval equivalent of yelling at their opponents to get off their lawn, as, after they got a few good hits in, the enemy retreated at a speed that they couldn't match. In both cases, the Ottomans being gamely pursued by the much newer and much faster Georgios Averof. Following this, the Hydra and Tsara became training ships, whilst their sister remained in frontline service. But after rising tensions and political schism, the French seized everything in the Hellenic Navy worth having during the First World War, only returning the ships at the end of that conflict. Following this, Hydra was almost immediately decommissioned and prepared for scrapping, but got a reprieve by resuming her role as a training ship until 1929. Spetsai had a similar story, except she became a communications school instead of a gunnery school, whilst Tsara was the last to go, becoming an actual school until 1932 when she too went to the breakers.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.